in 2011.
So it's actually been 14 months since the events of Prototype 1, by the time that we joined Prototype 2. In Prototype 1 we kind of left off with Alex Mercer having unleashed the devastating blacklight virus onto New York, and this time around we're taking a very different approach. We have a brand new main protagonist, Sergeant James Heller, and we're kind of investigating the impacts and effects of what Alex Mercer did in the first game, how it impacted New York, and more particularly like what it's done to the life and character of this new character that you play in the game. So for us, the Prototype universe was never really about a single character. It was never just about Alex Mercer. It was more about the blacklight virus and how that affects different people. And so we felt that this time around we wanted to go with somebody brand new and basically view the world through the eyes of a different character. And James Heller is somebody who is effectively, he was one of Mercer's victims from the first game. He's a native New Yorker and soldier who was away fighting overseas during the events of the first game, and he comes home to find his city has been absolutely devastated and his wife and child have been killed, and he holds Alex Mercer personally responsible for that. And so the story is very much a tale of vengeance with a character who's really strongly driven, and that also gives us an opportunity to view Alex Mercer from a very different perspective as well. In recasting him as the bad guy in all of this, we think we're giving players something really quite special that they've never really seen before. In Prototype 2 we're now in New York Zero. The New York that you and I know has been utterly devastated by the virus and is now pretty much unrecognisable from what it used to be. This time around it's split into 3 different land masses that we're referring to as the red, green and yellow zones. And the red zone is what used to be Manhattan, and this is an area that's now full of shattered skyscrapers with huge holes punched through the middle of them, the tops cut off in places, and then these enormous viral tendrils that have burst out of the ground and wrapped around the buildings. And it kind of turns it into an almost literal urban jungle in places. And then somewhere off the coast of the red zone you've got the yellow zone. And our yellow zone is a former industrial district that's now become this kind of really squalid, overcrowded, stinking triage and quarantine zone for those that were lucky enough or arguably unlucky enough to have escaped from the red zone. And then finally we've got the green zone. And the green zone it's where Blackwatch have set up their base, and so it's an area where it's subject to really heavy, brutal martial law, and Blackwatch are really ruling over it with an iron fist. And it's against that backdrop of these kind of 3 very distinct zones, each with their own look and feel and gameplay, that the story of James Heller versus Alex Mercer plays out. We've made a huge number of changes to the gameplay this time around, almost too many to try and put into a single answer. But really one of our key pushes has been for accessibility, taking the core of what was incredibly strong about the first game. There was so much about it that we were really proud of and we felt worked really well, but there were an awful lot of rough edges and a lot of things that kind of put players off. So this time around we're looking for a much more polished, rounded experience that anyone can get into and not just the hardcore. We're showing an awful lot of really cool new stuff at E3. I guess obviously one of the key things that we're showing is our new green zone that I spoke about before, but there's also, from a combat standpoint, we're showing off a bunch of new enemies in the form of our spiked brawlers and our juggernauts and a massive new entity called Tiny. But we're also showing off all of the improvements that we've made to combat, really making sure that players can always read the battlefield, they can always understand which enemy represents the biggest threat to them at any given point, and not only can they recognise it, but that they have the tools and training to be able to respond to it and set themselves up for a really devastating counterattack. And what's really exciting to me about that is that we can retain all of those enormous, iconic, really cool battles that people remember from Prototype 1, but we can give the player so much more control over them and make them feel really dominant and, effectively be the ultimate shape-shifting badass. So multiplayer was definitely something that we thought about at the beginning of the project. It's something that we discussed, and I can certainly see the appeal of multiplayer within the Prototype world. But really, the more that we thought about it, the more that we realised that the biggest challenge ahead of us, and the thing that we absolutely wanted to get right, was the single player campaign. We really wanted to deliver on that to the highest possible quality, and we felt that adding multiplayer was liable to dilute that experience, and that really wasn't what we wanted to do, because this time we want to hit it out of the park on the single player side. Prototype 2 will be coming out on Xbox 360, PlayStation 3 and PC sometime in 2012.